part of the Earglue Media family of podcasts.
You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 314, Star Wars Dinosaurs. No, I'm kidding. This is episode 314, The High Republic. And joining me tonight, back for a second week on the show because she's contractually obligated to do so, is Maggie Lovitt. Maggie, welcome back to the show. How are you doing tonight?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing just great. I've had a lot of dinosaurs on my mind lately, and I just can't wait till we get right into all of that. You guys, if you haven't heard, we'll get to exactly what that means a little bit later. This is actually the High Republic episode. So we're going to, we talked about what we were going to do, whether or not we'd come back and do a show dedicated to A Distant Echo, which is the second episode of season 7. And we are definitely going to cover that just a little bit. But Project Luminous dropped on us this week. And so we'll probably spend the majority of our show on that. So before we do, though, let's talk about, I guess the other big news outside of Project Luminous dropping was the fact that Bob Chapek, is it Chapek? What did we agree on?
Chapek? I think it's Chapek.
Okay, I'm going to say Chapek because it's Bob Chapek. He was recently just named the CEO of Walt Disney. And so, Bob Iger is stepping down. And this, it sends shockwaves, right? Anytime a CEO steps down from a major company. But was there really any surprise here with Bob Iger?
Not at all. I mean, his memoir came out last year. There was news with the investor group last April, I think. So it really wasn't much of a surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's just like his third time, right? I mean, he tried to get out, prior to, I think it was Fox, or maybe it was, the Fox acquisition. He tried to get out with right before the Lucasfilm acquisition. So this is all, he's just been kind of pushing it, moving the goalposts. He's been
trying to escape.
Yes, for a very long time. So this should have been no surprise, though I say that, and there were still people out there that were saying, oh, this is a sign, and this is a
conspiracy.
Oh, yeah, everything's a conspiracy. But no, sorry, I hate to burst your bubble, but this was in the works for a very, very, very long time. And if you'd read his novel, he goes into a lot of detail, and you can kind of read between the lines when he's not about all of that as well. So what do we know about Bob Chapek? Because I've heard other people have said, oh, he's the one that shut down, I don't know, something at the Disney parks. And I forget what it was now, but it sounded like he's kind of a Scrooge when it comes to spending money on the parks.
That's what I've heard. But then I've also heard people who work for the parks that seem to appreciate the efforts that he's put in. Yeah. So I guess it's torn between two worlds.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things, too. Like, I mean, I wouldn't expect any CEO, especially of this level, to come in and just start making these sweeping changes, right? I mean, we're not going to suddenly see a restructuring of Walt Disney by any means. I mean,
no.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't see that happening.
Yeah, they're successful. They make a lot of money. The formula has been working just fine. He's just got to keep things going. Now, will he make changes later down the road? Maybe, right? Yeah. But it could be years from now before we see those. And there may be things that Iger's put in place now that we won't see manifest until years later. So it may be hard without explicitly being told one way or the other, this is an Iger move or a Chapek move. It may be hard for us to kind of see all of that. So, anyways, Bob Iger, I know you listen to the show, so best of luck to you, sir. Really appreciate it. You weren't supposed to laugh that much. I mean, you don't know. Maybe he does. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so let's get into, and that was it. I don't think we really had anything else that was kind of big. There's some other stuff, a lot of rumors going on. If you haven't heard, I guess I will briefly mention this. The Star Wars novelization was released over the weekend at C2. What is the name of that? C232? I don't know what it was.
Yeah, it's a droid.
Sure. But yeah, some people got their hands on it, and that kind of leaked over. So we're not going to get into spoilers because I don't want to do that because we're not a spoilers show. And I know some people are waiting with bated breath for the novelization to come out. So we won't get into it, but I will say that it has caused stirred a lot of people up this week. So when that comes out officially, we will come back and we will break down that novel, especially the scenes that either gave us additional context or maybe no context at all. We'll spend some time doing that on the show like we always do. So look forward to that. I think that was it. All right, let's do this. Let's get into the Clone Wars Saved. We'll talk a little bit of Distant Echo, and then we'll get into Project Luminous. So, first off, and I didn't ask you this, I'm just going to assume, but did you get a chance to watch A Distant Echo, which is the second season here, or second episode of season 7?
Not only did I watch it once, but I watched it twice.
Wow, look at that. All right, so for those of you that have not seen the episode, I mean, we're going to spoil a couple of things here, so you might just want to fast forward about 5 to 10 minutes. But what did you think of the episode overall?
I loved it. I thought this was a much better episode than last week's. While I liked last week, I thought this one picked up the pace and kind of got more into the meat of the story.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's and we got to see Echo for the first time, which was a pretty emotional thing for me. Even so, when we did this, we I shouldn't say review. We broke the show down, this episode, again, a couple years ago. And even on the rough cut, that the idea that Echo was suddenly there was emotional, but then it was also emotional because I was thinking, well, we will never get to see him again. And here we are now, fast forward 2 years later. And it was for the first viewing. I mean, I didn't shed a tear, but I mean, my gosh, that's Echo that's coming out of there. And we hadn't seen him for so long. How did that resonate with you?
Oh, my heart. I was so excited to see him again. And I feel like the way they portrayed that moment really conveyed that emotion as well.
Yeah.
Because Rex was just, you could see it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a long lost buddy. And right. I mean, everything they've been through, right. The weight of the Clone Wars itself kind of comes out in that moment when he finally sees him again. And you know, Rex, like us, thought Echo was gone. So it's a great moment. And there's a lot more to come too. We can kind of, well, I'll just throw this out there now, even though it really happens a little bit later. One of the things that we speculated on was whether or not Echo became a member of the Bad Batch, right? Because he's no longer just a clone. He's now been altered in some way, and whether or not that would play out. But can you see a future storyline with them in this season where we see Echo as a full-fledging member of somebody like the Bad Batch, or do you think he goes back to, you know, fighting alongside Rex and Cody and everybody else?
I would love to see that, especially since there's the line, I think it's Hunter that says it, that he's just another reg. So it would be interesting to see that progress and have him actually be part of the Bad Batch. Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe even win Hunter over, right? That would be kind of a nice little, I don't know, twist there where he's got to kind of earn his respect kind of thing. I worry that we're not going to have enough episodes to really kind of play that out. But, yeah, even if they give us a couple lines, I think I'd take it. So that was kind of like the big moment, right? But then we also had kind of another moment early on. We had the scene that we saw in the teaser trailer for season 7. We're in season 7, where we saw Anakin and Padme, and they were kind of face to face, and they kind of touched hands, if you will, right? And I think it was apparent to all of us that, whoa, she's pregnant, but you know, Anakin didn't pick up on it. And I think originally we had speculated that that was a scene somewhere in the Revenge of the Sith era. And so that was going to cross over, but it looks like it's obviously not. This is a new scene that was added in. It was not part of the original rough cut. So what did you think of that scene? What did you think of Anakin being a stereotypical, you know, male husband who did not know that the white woman standing in front of him is, you know, pregnant already?
Anakin is an idiot, but he is our idiot.
Yeah, right.
No, I loved it. I just thought it was so funny because it was so obvious. Like her hands on her stomach. Yep. Oh, Anakin.
Yeah.
He's lucky he's cute.
Right.
Now.
They made it. And they went out of their way to make it obvious to us, obviously. But I mean, I think if, I don't know, maybe we'll cut him some slack. Maybe he couldn't see full dimensions in a hollow net like that, or hologram.
Yeah. We'll go with that.
Sure, why not? Yeah. So it was a neat scene. It was very, very reminiscent of like I'll say like a Raylo scene, if you will. I don't want to.
Yes.
I don't know if they were going for that intentionally, but now that I see any kind of hand sex, touching, whatever, that's the first thing I think of is that.
Yeah,
and
I mean, Rian Johnson did it best.
he did it. He was the first one. So yeah, that was a cool scene. It was added in later, and we'll talk about why that. Well, I don't know why that scene was added in. I kind of have my suspicions, and they probably make sense. We'll get to that in a second. But before we do, there was one other thing too. So just before that, we're going like backwards here, but just before that moment, we had a moment where Rex and Anakin were talking about doing that thing. It's that time kind of thing, right? They're kind of hinting that Anakin's got to do something, and Rex knows that he has to do something in return for him. And so they end up moving off, and Anakin goes into this, it looks like kind of a bunker, if you will. And Rex stays outside, and he's got to watch to make sure that no one disturbs the call that he's going to place to Padme. Right? He's still doing this all hush-hush, very secretive, if you will. And it's in that moment that Obi-Wan suddenly comes up and sees that Rex is standing in front of the door. And we get this very kind of comical, there's a lot of levity in the scene, but there's these guys, Rex and Obi-Wan, going back and forth talking about, where's Anakin? And you can see on Rex's face, right? He is really uncomfortable because he's got to lie to a Jedi.
So uncomfortable.
Yeah. But what were your thoughts when you saw this? Because this scene was not in the original one. This is the first time we'd ever seen that.
It was great.
Yeah.
I love that moment.
The one thing about that, the one thing about it is I think it sparked up a lot of conversation about how much did Rex really know? Did he know that, how far did it go? Does he know that Padme and Anakin are a thing? Does he know that Padme's pregnant? Even though that would be funnier, wouldn't it? Rex knows, but Anakin didn't.
Oh God. It does pose a lot of really interesting questions.
Yeah.
And how many people knew?
True. Yeah. I mean, how many of the 501st knew?
Yeah.
It's quite, because you got to think they've been trying to keep this secret for so long, and they can't be perfect every time, right? They may have slipped up somewhere. You would think like somebody like Cody probably knows. Maybe he turns a blind eye and a deaf ear kind of thing. I don't know. And then it also begs the question: how much do you think the troopers know about the bylaws of the Jedi Code, right? That they can't have attachments.
Yeah. And how much do they really care? Because it's not.
Yeah, good point. Why do they even care, right? They're on a mission. I think Rex would care because he's Rex. He's Rex, and he has a heart, and he and Anakin are close, and he follows Anakin, and all that. So I think he probably does definitely care. But here, the other big question is, how much does Obi-Wan know? Because Obi-Wan makes a comment right at the very end after they walked away. He says, "Please tell Padme I said hello." And there's a great moment in there where they're kind of just staring at each other, right? Obi-Wan standing there with his pretentious look on his face, right? He's got his eyebrow raised, like, I know what you just did. And then Anakin's kind of turned back, looking back over his shoulder at Obi-Wan, and he's kind of staring him down. It almost looks, I don't know, it's almost like a prelude to what's about to happen in Revenge of the Sith between them, right? But what are your thoughts?
Well, that was like what I was saying before the show about how that moment mirrored the I have the high ground, because Obi-Wan's standing above him. And so just like, it's a great visual callback to a movie that hasn't happened technically yet.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. And I just thought it was interesting because I remember thinking during like post Attack of the Clones and then during Revenge of the Sith, wondering how much Obi-Wan knew, because he spent so much time around Anakin. How could you not know that he's pining after Padme?
Yeah.
I just feel like it was the worst kept secret.
Yeah. Well, and then there's another aspect of it too with Obi-Wan, right? I mean, I don't know that he knew that Padme was pregnant. I would assume he didn't, based on what happened in Revenge of the Sith. But,
yes.
But I don't think he for 1 second doesn't know that there are feelings between the two, and that they're probably just more than the casual, she's kind of cute looking, or he's kind of cute looking. Because, I mean, he himself, right? I mean, he's been there with Satine. So, yeah, I mean, he if anybody knows, it's going to be Obi-Wan. I'm sure he saw right. He was able to kind of see right through that. But yeah, it is kind of, there is some tension there. And that's why I think that scene was great. I mean, and I didn't even catch the high ground thing. I think that's hilarious, if that was intentional or not, to kind of put him up on that little ramp there like that, looking down at Anakin that way. So that's that scene itself. was added. Okay. The original scene that was in there was kind of this. So, and you can go out there, if you go out to YouTube and look up A Distant Echo and find the rough cut, you can definitely see that version. But originally, before they did that, Anakin, Rex, and the Bad Batch went out to the ship the Bad Batch was using, and I forget the name of it right now. But they had some nose art. Like it was basically a pinup of Padme that was sitting on the front of on the nose of the ship. And they get into this conversation where Anakin looks at it and he's like, what the heck is that? And I forget it may have been Wrecker, I think, or someone was like, that's our girl, the senator, right? And they start talking about her, and yeah. So anyways, it was a little cringy, I would say, when that in the original rough cut, they've taken it out, and I don't know if it's because they took it out because it probably doesn't I don't know, it may not resonate as well these days as it may have back when they did it originally. Pin up girls and nose art on World War II planes was kind of a thing, but that was a sign of the times and not something you would see today, right? Yeah. And it could just be that they decided they had to cut something because they wanted to include this scene in here with Padme and Anakin and the whole Obi-Wan and Rex thing and that whole little, relationship. But I don't know. What are your thoughts, I guess, on the original scene itself? Was it okay? Was it harmful? Was it in bad taste? Did it really need to even be there? And was it, a good idea that they replaced it with the scene that we got?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's harmful. It's just unnecessary. I mean, I get what they're calling back to, like you said, with the warplanes that did have this pinup girl nose art, but it doesn't really seem to fit within the realm of Star Wars. Yeah. So I personally don't mind that it's gone. I wouldn't have minded if it was still in it either, I don't think. But I'm glad that they switched that scene around to something that's more Padme focused rather than male gaze on Padme.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of the nail on the head right there. It really does kind of shift it it still has Padme, but in a very, very different way, in a more meaningful way to the overall story.
Yes.
Having that on the pinup art is really about the Bad Batch and how, testosterone filled they are, right? And that kind of thing. And we don't really need that because we get it. I mean, my God, he was, bench pressing a gonk droid eating a chicken leg in the last episode. So yeah, we get it. Dude's on roids, right?
Yes.
All right. So overall, I guess final thoughts on the episode and how entrenched are you now with this storyline?
I loved it. I'm ready for the next episode.
Yeah, I am too. I can't wait to see, and I hope we get more episodes. I hope we get more scenes where they've swapped out things like that. That was my biggest thing going into this is like, oh, we've already seen all 4 episodes. And I was really hopeful that we would get something new, and we did in this episode. So I don't know what they would take out in the next one because it's pretty slim and very story focused driven. So I don't know there'll be an opportunity for us to get anything new, but if they do, great. I think the way it ends is pretty awesome. So, all right, let's do this.
Yes.
Dinosaurs. No, I mean Project Luminous, aka the High Republic. So we were talking about it on the last episode, and we had said at the time the prevailing theory was that this was going to be something set 500 years before the Phantom Menace, and it was going to call back to an era called the High Republic, which had been first mentioned in Dooku Jedi Lost. And I think for the most part, everything we said was spot on, except the timing. We're not going back 500 years. Looks like we're going back about 200 years-ish.
Yeah.
About there. But tell us what Project Luminous is, if you would, please.
All right. So the official summary is Star Wars: The High Republic, which was previously referred to as Project Luminous. Let's see. The 5 things from StarWars.com. It was kicked off with the question that Kevin Scott asked, which was, what scares the Jedi? And so that is what sparked this entire storyline.
Yeah. So what? Yeah. Let me pause you right there. What does scare the Jedi? Like what? I mean, because we didn't really. If we go through all of this, and we're going to go through a lot of detail here and a lot of notes, but when you go through it, I don't know if there's anything that really jumps out at me that like, oh, it's right in my face. That's exactly what would scare the Jedi, right?
Yeah.
So what is it? What is it, do you think, in your own opinion, would be something that would scare the Jedi?
I feel like the only thing that could possibly scare the Jedi is the dark side and not having the means to counter it. Which I feel like there might be some part of that with this Marauders group that they're supposed to encounter. And what is it? They're supposed to shut off the hyperdrive, something hyperspace.
Yeah, the Niles are out there. Yeah, we'll pause that.
There's
thought.
So much. Yes.
Yeah, we'll get into that here in just a second. I really struggle with this because I think about the dark side, right? And I think about like Darth Maul and all those. And for the most part, you rarely see Jedi show fear, especially when it comes to the Sith. It's quite the contrary, right? I mean, they seem pretty confident that they're going to be able to take them down. And we think of Kenobi's line of Sith Lords are our specialty, right? That doesn't seem like something that always scares them. What would scare me, I think, as a Jedi was the inability to manifest the Force or the absence of the Force in some way. Now, I'm not. This is me speculating. I have nothing to go off of here. And maybe it gets into. I don't think they're going to get into midichlorians and all that, but if there's something that was to negate the ability, and we're not going to get into the Yuzon Vong and all that. Don't worry, we're not going there yet. But I don't know what else would instill fear in a Jedi like that. Like, what would scare them? I don't know. Maybe you guys know. If you guys have any thoughts around it, please hit us up on Discord and social media. But and I'm sure at some point this is all going to come out, right? It's going to manifest. We're going to get more information on what is. I don't think they can keep a secret that big, tight-lipped for so long. But all right, so go on. So please, what? So we know that this was all sparked by Kevin Scott's, or was it Charles Soule or Kevin Scott that asked that question?
Let's see. There's so much content.
It was one of them.
It was one of them.
It's fine.
I'm trying to track down exactly which one of them said the quote. But we know it was all started on Slack with their back and forth conversations.
I saw that, and I was like, "Hey, cool! They're using Slack too. Wow, that's amazing." Well, here, and I joke about that, but you know what? That's actually a good thing, right? Because one of the biggest fears I think I've always had, and I'm going to wax a little bit of sequel trilogy. I'm not going to call it hate. I'm going to call it constructive feedback. But one of the things that I really has always rubbed me the wrong way about the sequel trilogy was this idea that we would get different directors, writers to come in, have kind of autonomy and free will, right? To kind of do free agency, really to do whatever they wanted with the storyline without having a cohesive, beginning, middle, and end plotted out. And I think that's why we got where we are today with the sequel trilogy. That's why I think I have the most problems with the sequel trilogy, and most of it just stems from that. And if you've been listening to the show for the last 2 years or 3 years, you know very well what I'm talking about. But here, the idea that these guys got together and they've already had, I don't know, at least one retreat, they've probably had more, but the idea that they were actually sitting here and plotting this stuff out, right? Setting together. Up together, right? As a cohesive group and saying, here's our middle, here's our ending, here's the beginning, here are the characters, here's the things that we want to do. And then beyond that, they stay in constant contact with one another with a tool like Slack. And it doesn't matter about the tool. The tool is it's agnostic, right? In terms of what they're trying to accomplish. They are trying to make sure that they constantly stay lock in step with one another and be able to play off one another. I think I saw that in there. I forget who it was, but one of the writers mentioned that, hey, we are constantly talking and we're giving each other Easter eggs.
Yes.
Like, that's great. I'm going to stick that in my storyline, or I'll reference that in this particular, chapter of my book, that kind of thing. So that to me is very exciting.
Yeah, I think that was Daniel who said that.
Oh, yeah. Daniel Jose Older, right.
Yes. And, that's one of the reasons I think I first got so excited about the High Republic was I saw how excited all of these creators were and how excited they were together. And then seeing them talking about these retreats and seeing about how they were working together, that unity is what I've been looking for in a Star Wars story.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And to be fair, it's like, it's not a huge request. I mean, this is just stuff that we would expect from anything, right? I mean, take a TV series, right? You hope that if someone's plotting out 9 seasons of a TV show that's got 20, 24 episodes per, you would hope that at some point prior to them going in, they've plotted this out, right? You don't hope they're going to go figuring it out as they go along. I'll bring up Lost just briefly, because Lost is like one of my, I love it, and I hate it, right? All day long. But Lost is one of those shows where I really struggled to believe the writers that they actually had, like, Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse. I always was struggling. I'd listen to the podcast and struggled with them telling me that, oh yeah, no, we've got these, meters in the ground and stakes in the ground about where we want to go. And then things would veer off and you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't seem like that jives with what they just said. And so at the end of the day, I mean, I still love that show. However, it was painful to get through. And there are other shows where I know they've plotted this stuff out. I won't bring up Game of Thrones because it can be a little sensitive, but anyways, am I wrong? I mean, that's what you would want, right? You'd want them to kind of map this thing out before they just jump in and wing it, shoot from the hip kind of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what you want. And you can see the best laid plans on TV shows and movies come from a collaborative effort.
Cool. Yeah. Good to know. I mean, you would know more than I would. So
it's really easy to tell also from like the actor's point of view too.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. Yeah. You're probably reading it and going, what the heck happened here? Or what? Yeah, this makes sense. It aligns just right. All right. What else we got? What else do we know about the High Republic?
There's so much, which is awesome. There's so much new content coming at us this year. It's amazing. The
Charles Soule is writing the first novel called Light of the Jedi. And I think did we get the date on that when that's coming out?
Let me pull up my Amazon account.
Right. Let me check the cart. I know it's in August. I think it's like August 27th or so. Maybe not. But this is the first one that's coming out. And there's a quote here from Charles Soule. It says, "I would be lying if I said I wasn't thrilled to finally be writing a Star Wars novel. I grew up reading some of the amazing Star Wars novels by James Luceno and Tim Zahn." He calls him Tim. How cute. And lots of other great writers. So to be able to add my book to this is a gigantic thrill. I finished it. I've turned it in, and I'm thrilled to have people start seeing it. And I've seen some initial feedback already. And I forget who it was I was following or stalking on Twitter, but somebody had already had a chance to read this, and they were kind of giving it high praise, which you would expect at this point, right? They want to hype this up. But I mean, Charles Soule is one of those great writers. We've talked about on the show. We've loved what he done with the Darth Vader series of comics, as well as the Kylo Ren series. I think that's going in a great direction. So I'm super excited that he's got the first book out of the gate. How about you?
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I think I said on this podcast last week how I really wanted to see him write something larger and more meaty. So I'm excited for the novel. Yeah. And I already pre-ordered it.
Yeah, and it looks...
You were close, August 25th.
August 25th, 2020. Okay. Yeah, so let's talk about this one just quickly. So again, this is called Light of the Jedi. This is a full-length novel, so it's not one of the young adult novels, and this is not one of the comic books. It says 200 years before the events of Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, in the era of the glorious High Republic, the noble and wise Jedi Knights must face a frightening threat to themselves, the galaxy, and the Force itself. So the Force itself part is the one, I think that's what really got me thinking about, okay, well, maybe there is something going on with the Force. Maybe it's going to be, I don't know, removed for them, or there's a threat of it being removed in some way. And that would scare the crap out of me if I were a Jedi. And we have, beyond that, the only other thing I think we know, there's a couple other things. So on Charles Soule's Twitter account, he does confirm that is a Wookiee Jedi. So we're talking about the art here. Who looks like he's wearing something from Life Day, right? From like not red, but just like the white color, but it looks like that same kind of an outfit. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not.
He's got a cape on. It's amazing.
Yeah.
They all have matching capes.
You can see it in the background. Yeah. That's got to be super hot for that Wookiee, by the way.
Do it for the fashion.
He's probably just sweating to death in that thing. Yeah, exactly. But they said that, so the Wookiee Jedi's name is oh boy, I'm gonna smash. you even got a growl in there. Buryaga Agaburi. He says he is wonderful. So, okay, we'll take his word for it. The lady in the front is Avar Chris, and she looks awesome. I think she looks really cool. She looks very much, well, I don't want to get too excited or too carried away here, but when we talked about the High Republic and whether or not this was going to be far enough back, we obviously cannot not have that conversation without talking about the Knights of the Old Republic. And this design does have some shades of the Old Republic, even though we're not going that far back, which I think is cool, right? It does look a little bit more primitive, if you will. It doesn't have the full-fledged like body armor that we see that they would wear in Knights of the Old Republic, which makes sense. But it does look a little dated, which is a good thing, right? We want it to look like it's set further back in history. And then I don't think we got names on the other folks here in this picture, right?
No, not yet.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see what else. And then we should mention also Avar Chris, and I have not read this one yet. I don't think it's out, but The Rise of Kylo Ren issue 3, which I think comes out, bananas, it might be out tomorrow now that I say that. But I think she's going to make an appearance in that comic if it's not out already. And I apologize, I'm behind on my comic books, but yeah, so we'll get to see her there as well. So the other thing that's noticeable, I guess, in the background is that space station. And this seems to play a pretty big part in this storyline because this 200 years prior to, it sounds like the premise of this is you have a galaxy that is trying to claim their mark in as far as like planets and like almost kind of like the Wild West in the when America or the United States was starting to get there was a big land grab that was going on, right? It sounds very similar in that vein that there's people out there going and claiming territories, whether those be planets or sections or moons or whatever else. And the Jedi are kind of the peacekeepers. They're kind of trying to keep everybody from completely losing, what and killing each other, which I think is a cool concept. But the idea here is that this space station, there's also something going on that's causing spaceships to pop out of hyperspace, and it's shutting down hyperspace lanes. They're not able to use them. And I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but the space station that you see kind of float in the background was thrown in there as a kind of a direct result of that. And that is to kind of help navigate. It's almost kind of like a floating lighthouse, if you will. It's supposed to allow starships to be able to navigate in the galaxy without having to rely on hyperspace because it's unreliable because of something that is occurring right now. Did I get all that right?
Yes, you did.
Wow. I don't know how I did that. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. What else anything else that you're excited about before we move on to Claudia Gray?
I think you covered everything I was excited about. Honestly.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Claudia Gray. So Claudia Gray has one called Into the Dark, and this one comes out October 13th.
Yes.
So this is, it's pretty, almost 2 months afterwards. Do you have the little synopsis pulled up there?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, go ahead. Give us what we're talking about here.
Let's see how much I can slaughter all of these names.
Right. You got all, I give you the hard one.
Padawan Reyes Silas is being sent from the cosmopolitan galactic capital of Coruscant to the undeveloped frontier, and he couldn't be less happy about it. He'd rather stay at the Jedi Temple studying the archives. But when the ship he's traveling on is knocked out of hyperspace in a galactic-wide disaster, Reyes finds himself at the center of the action. The Jedi and their traveling companions find refuge on what appears to be an abandoned space station. But then strange things start happening, leading the Jedi to investigate the truth behind the mysterious station, a truth that could end in tragedy.
Maggie Lovitt, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is a young adult novel, right?
I think
did she pull the young adult novel card?
I don't think she did. I think Justina did.
Okay, all right. And I say that only because I'm going off the artwork, because the artwork looks a little younger, kiddish, I guess, if you will. It looks animated, right? But there's some cool. Go ahead.
Are you looking at Test of Courage art?
Oh, I am.
Yes.
No, I'm an idiot.
There's no cover art for Claudia yet.
Oh, I thought I saw one with her and it was the two guys on the front. Yeah, I think I just pulled it up. Yeah, that one it's got like almost like an Obi-Wan kind of character on it. It's got like 2 Jedi, and it doesn't really give you a whole lot of detail. And we really don't have a lot of details on this one apart from what Maggie just read. I don't think she's really said a whole lot. I've been checking on her Twitter account.
She's been pretty quiet.
Yeah, she has been very quiet. But her book's not coming out till probably later, right? October 13th.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she's got time to kind of get that one out. Did you find it?
I'm still looking.
Keep looking. I'll move on. Let's talk about the one I was talking about, like a dummy. A Test of Courage. So this is by Justina Ireland, and this is the young adult novel. And this one says, when a transport ship is abruptly kicked out of hyperspace, here we go again, as part of a galaxy-wide disaster, newly minted teen Jedi, Vernestra Rowe, a young Padawan, an audacious tech kid, and the son of an ambassador are stranded on a jungle moon where they must work together to survive the dangerous terrain and a hidden danger lurking in the shadows. So this one sounds like I'm going to call it the Goonies, but it's one of these books where you've got a bunch of different characters that kind of come together to thrust into this one particular predicament, and they've got to get out together, right? There's probably some bond that's formed as a result of all that. But beyond that, there's really not a whole lot of other details here in this one as well. Do you do the young adult novels?
I have. I read the young adult novel for The Force Awakens, but that's pretty much been it.
Yeah.
So
what did you think of it?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good summary of like the movie and what the novelization was. And I thought it kind of gave some more human aspects to the characters because they were trying to relate to the kids reading it. So I'm excited. I mean, I pre-ordered this one too. But, and it looks fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. The droid is of particular interest because that droid does look like Professor Huang from the Clone Wars. And I don't know if it is or not. I don't think it's been confirmed, and maybe it has. As of this show, I don't think it has. But if it is, that'd be cool. So this was the droid. I think we saw it. I think it was in a couple different episodes, but one of the ones that comes to mind is one where Yoda has all the younglings and they're trying to get their lightsabers and all that. I think we get to see them in that episode. So yeah, it looks like or it could be, who was it? Emmy, and I forget Emmy something, but Emmy, the droid from The Force Awakens, right? It looks very similar to that droid that's at Takadana in Maz's castle. I don't know if that's her or not. But that story, if you go pull up the Force Awakens, not the novelization, but the what's it called now? It's not the Art of book.
Oh,
Visual Dictionary.
there we go.
There we go. Man, this is hard to do. If you pull up the Visual Dictionary, it mentions that droid, that Emmy used to be part of the Jedi Order or worked with the Jedi Order. So I don't know. Maybe it is. It could be her. Who knows? But anyways, this one looks pretty good too.
All right, I put the Claudia Gray cover art in here for you to look at.
Did you? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, let's go back to that one. Let me pull it up here. Oh yeah, see, that's it. I knew it. Anyways, yeah. So it looks like a young Obi-Wan. Now she made a comment about one of the characters being who did she reference? Was it Matthew McConaughey?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm thinking it's this guy here. All right. I don't know. Maybe it is him. I don't know. But he's holding a green lightsaber, and whoever's in the background has got a thermal detonator in the hand. A lot of straps around her thighs. I don't know what that's about. Yeah,
I don't know. It looks like somebody who's been like attached by a harness and coming down off a ship or something.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. I think you're right. I'm wrong. Yeah. Mine is just like useless straps. No, that's probably right. It does look like a harness. Yeah. I apologize. Yeah, I don't know.
It's hard to tell.
It's cover art. We don't got a lot to go on, so we can't hype this up too much.
Nope.
But it's Claudia Gray, so do we really need to?
Exactly. It speaks for itself.
It speaks for itself, right? Let's talk about Mr. Olders, because he's got a comic book, which I thought was interesting that he was going to be doing a comic book, because he's predominantly done novels, at least in Star Wars anyways, right? And he's done a lot of stuff. But he's got something called the High Republic Adventures coming out by IDW. So it looks like they're keeping the IDW brand as well as Marvel. So they're kind of splitting those two avenues between the two writers there. Do we know anything about this one?
No.
I think we got the character names.
Yes, on the cover. Farzaza and Lula.
Farzaza and Lula. Farzaza. Farlala. Okay. Okay.
It's really hard to tell.
Yeah.
That writing is not great.
But is this like a cosplayer's dream right here?
Yes.
I saw this and I'm thinking, man, these are like really like cool, clean cosplay type costumes that someone could crank out pretty easily. Yeah. So do you do the comics at all?
I do. So I'm excited. This is actually the one I'm the most excited for because I absolutely,
really? Why is that?
I love the character design. I think the biggest thing I've been the most excited about for the High Republic is that there are a lot of non-humanoid characters finally. I think that was one of the, among many crimes, one of the highest crimes in the sequel trilogy is that there was no fantastic non-humanoid characters. So I'm really excited to see these characters and get to see new species, especially as Jedi.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I hadn't realized. Yeah, there really are a lot of aliens.
And this character design is like exactly the kind of character I like. So I'm very excited.
Cool. Yeah, and sometimes I know, and to be fair, I think I've heard that when they stray away from non-humanoid characters, then it equates into money and special effects and all of that. So I get that. But this is why I think it's perfect for novels because you don't have to do any of that stuff, right? It's whatever you want. It's kind of a blank slate to kind of have these characters be whoever you want them to be. So that's kind of cool. I'm trying to think if we had anything else on that comic, and I don't see anything else here. All right. And then lastly, we have another comic called The High Republic, just simply The High Republic. And this is the one that Kevin Scott is writing. And this is the one I'm probably the most excited for. One, I'm a big comics fan. And two, I like the artwork that I've seen so far. I like the fact that he's writing it. And they gave us a little bit of little tidbit here. It says, the exciting thing is that while we have seen Jedi Masters with their Padawans and Jedi Knights operating on their own, here we follow a group of Jedi of different ages and experience operating as a team. It says it's set on Starlight Beacon. So that is the Jedi base, I think, that's floating in space there that we've seen already. It says we also focus on Keeve Trennis, a newly minted Jedi who finds herself stationed on the beacon. She's a good Jedi. In fact, she's a great Jedi, but she doesn't believe it, especially when she realizes all that she's surrounded by a bunch of real legends. So that real legends thing makes me wonder if we're going to get some of the legends that we know about, or are these going to be legends that are soon to be revealed? So with that, I had a question for you. You already know what I'm going to ask you. So given that this is 200 years before, what is the likelihood that we're going? Well, okay, Yoda, we know what we're going to see, right?
Yes.
We've already seen some art. And we'll talk about him in just a second here. But are there any other characters that you think that we would see? Are we going to see like a Yaddle? Are we going to witness the birth of Chewbacca? I mean, how far do you think they're going to take this and try to play up on some of the legendary characters from the Star Wars saga, Skywalker saga?
I am so torn about this. I've spent like all week trying to figure out if I really want them to go heavy-handed with the characters we know, like Yoda, or if they are better served as cameos in the story and allow these new characters to stand on their own. So yeah, I'm super torn because I would love to see Yoda, but we have the child. We don't need to see Yoda ever again.
All right.
But I would love to see Chewbacca. I love the Wookiees, especially since we have a Wookiee Jedi. It would be fun. Yeah,
it would be. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm kind of torn. I don't know what would be best. Like one part of me, and I wanted to get into like the pros and cons, and maybe we can just make it kind of organically here. But one of the things that I'm excited about is the idea that we're not necessarily bound to a lot of the events in the Skywalker saga.
Yes.
I think it's a really, really good thing. I think that's always put a lot of the writers in a particular box that they have to kind of work around, and there's certain things they can't do and things they can't say. And they don't have that here, right? 200 years before, that gives them enough freedom to kind of play in a sandbox, if you will. And on the other hand, one of my fears is that because we are not going to have some of these well-established characters that are front and center, that it may feel like it's not Star Wars, that it could be any science fiction that just happens to have lightsabers. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm saying that's a fear that I have. And so you kind of need to find a good balance, right? You probably want to strike a good balance between having some of these legendary characters like a Yoda kind of be your anchor, allow other characters and storylines to kind of tether off of that, but you don't want them to be front and center either. I don't think that's what I hope they're not going that way.
And it doesn't it doesn't seem like they are.
Yeah. There's nothing in here outside of the concept art that we've seen that would lead us to believe that suddenly this is all revolving around Yoda. And so that's a good thing. Because if it was, I would not be interested.
Talk about bait and switch. Yeah,
it'd be a hard pass. I hope that doesn't happen. But at the same time, you would expect him to kind of be there. Maybe they need some advice. And in one particular chapter, they go and visit Yoda, and we get to kind of see Yoda be himself, or maybe not. What I think would be interesting too is if they did bring somebody in like Yoda, maybe we see a little bit more a Yoda that's not as reserved, a little bit more brash, a little bit more daring, right? And that would lead us to believe that, okay, maybe something happens that changes him and turns him into the Yoda that we know of today, that's a little bit more cautious when it comes to certain things, or horrible at making good decisions for the betterment of the Jedi Council. I'm kidding. Maybe not. But, it would be cool if we got a different dynamic of him as well, right? If you're going to do it, I mean, be brave. Do something a little challenging. Don't give us the norm. I think we're all going into this expecting to see the Yoda that we know of. And if they could change it up a little bit, I think that would speak volumes to us in a lot of different ways. So,
yeah.
Any other characters that you think we would see or potentially see? Because I have some.
Then maybe you should say, because I'm trying to rack my brain.
So one of the things that, so when we covered on the show, we covered Dooku Jedi Lost. And I was really struck by there's a couple moments in there where they just spout off all of these Old Republic references. And they even mentioned the Old Republic. So they are, distinctly two different timelines. This is not, the High Republic is not just the Old Republic in a different name. But there are other names in here that came up that were not Old Republic. Some of the characters themselves, like Terra Sanube. So Terra Sanube was that male Cassian. He was I guess he was kind of the leader for one of the Jedi clans, and I forget which one it was. There was like 4 or 5 different clans. These were like the school, like the Hogwarts schools, right, or the Hogwarts groups, right? Yes. Slytherin and all that. Yeah, you're a Slytherin, but that's fine. But yeah, so he was one of them, and he's been around for a very, very long time. So it's very likely that I would expect to see somebody like Terra Sanube in these books, in these novels and all that. I think that's probably going to be a given. But the one that interests me the most is there's a moment in Dooku Jedi Lost when they're talking about Padawan Keelis Terradine. And that's the kid that got a hold of like the Boggin collection. So in the Boggin collection is supposed to be like this hidden vault of artifacts, right, from the archives. And these are all things that are like scrolls and swords, relics, lightsabers. This is, I think one point they mentioned it was a lightsaber of Darth Krall. And I think that part of it probably goes back to the Old Republic. So I don't think we'll see like a Darth Krall, but I think it would be neat to kind of see somebody like Keelis Terradine, or Terradine, however you say that, in this novel, because he was very intriguing to me. He was very much like, who was the kid in Harry Potter, the one that was that they referenced, that was, I think it turned this I'm losing myself here. The kid they kept referencing, who was that Harry, that was at the school at Hogwarts a long time ago, and they kept flashing back to what was going on with him in the first book. All right, I'll use my 50-50.
Totally blanking here.
You're fine. We'll phone a friend. We'll make it up. That guy. anyways, it's a very similar story, right? There was somebody that who had been there before, who made some mistakes. He's well known, or he or she is well known, right? It was the same kind of concept here with this Padawan. And so I think it would be really neat if we got to actually see either the events here, or get to see that character referenced in some way and actually be alive and around when this happened. There were a couple other things that from Dooku Jedi Lost, and I actually went through all my notes to try to find this stuff. The Sorcerers of Tuned were mentioned in there. They were a group that was kind of associated with the dark side of the Force. We know they had artifacts and all that, so maybe we get something there. And then I mentioned Darth Qual, which I don't think we'll get to see. I think they mentioned that his name was like Radaki or something. He was a Force-sensitive person that lived. He was part of the Lost 20. Which I thought would be interesting too, because they did play up the Lost 20 in Dooku Jedi Lost. Maybe we get to see some of those 20-ish, either as flashbacks, or maybe we get to actually, meet one of them that does become one of the Lost 20, which I think would be also cool. So there's a lot of potential here, I think, to really reference Dooku Jedi Lost. And I think that book, I thought the book did really well, honestly, or the audio drama I thought was done really well. But I think it's going to, benefit from something like this if they do make more references in the High Republic storylines. How excited are you for Yaddle?
On a scale of 1 to 10, maybe a 5.
Really? That's generous.
Yeah, it's probably generous.
Yeah. No, that was a joke. Nobody's excited about Yaddle. So here's one thing. I think we've covered all of them. But here's one other thing that I've got. Let's get into what we're excited about the most and what maybe gives us pause. And I think one of the things I have, and this is intentional, I get it, because they did say this is going to be very light side focused, and we are going to see the Jedi in a way that we've never seen a Jedi before and all that, right? But then I wonder, and we've not talked about the bad guys here, the antagonist group, which is the Nihil. I think it's spelled Nihil. But are they going to be enough? Are we absent of the dark side so much that this doesn't really feel like Star Wars? We've got the Jedi, but we may not have any Sith initially. I've also heard this is phase 1, and I'm using air quotes because I don't think that's officially what they're calling this, but that maybe in future phases, then we get maybe there is the dark side presence that manifests in some way, and we get to see that.
I've heard that too.
Yeah. So, but out of the gate, that does make me worry that it's not going to feel like Star Wars. So I don't know, but that's just one thing. What are some of the things that you've come up with, I guess, in terms of things that you're looking forward to, and things that maybe you're a little weary of, or potentially could go wrong at some point?
The only thing I think I'm weary of is fandom itself.
That's a good one.
Because I'm personally very excited, and I have yet to find a reason to be very concerned with what we've been shown so far. Everything seems amazing and feels like I have the expanded universe back. And I am excited about that. I'm not as concerned with it being light side heavy. I feel like there will be enough stories within these characters that might not be purely light side, just based off of how these authors have written previous works. There's definitely a duality in a lot of their characters. But I think the most excited thing so far for me is, like I mentioned earlier, that there's less human characters and more other species. Yeah. I'm very excited for that. Diversity, Yeah.
No, that's awesome. There's, and I would agree. I mean, my list of things that I'm worried about is really short. Like, there's not a lot here. And because I just am excited of the potential this has, right? I mean, there's just so many different new things, new characters. We're in a different time frame. Again, we're not necessarily bound by the events of the Skywalker saga or anything prior to that. So there's a lot of open room here, right? A big map in terms of where they can go with a lot of this stuff. So that's all really exciting. I also like the aesthetic. I don't know what it is. I posted this on Twitter, but it's got like this 80s synth vibe art look to it. The colors that they're using and all that. And I think that's really neat because it's very not what I would think Star Wars to be. And so I'm super excited that this is going to be that. And I don't know, maybe again, this is just part of the concept art where I'm seeing all this. But I mean, if you look at these images, I mean, they kind of scream, throwback to the 80s stuff in terms of the colors and the palettes that they're using, which is really awesome. So that's all very exciting. In terms of things that give me pause, again, I mentioned the fact that we don't have, the dark side here. I don't really have much out. I can try and think what else I had on my list. I don't have anything else. Like, it all seems pretty good. And I mean, I'm taking this with a cautiously optimistic approach, but at the same time, and it's really hard not to get behind this thing. And I think that says a lot. They've got some great writers lined up for all of this. I think that's going to be a big plus as well. They've got a cohesive story that they're working on, at least out of the gate, which I think is really good. I do want to talk about one other thing before we go. We pulled up, there was one particular art piece that was done, and it's concept art. In fact, let's go through just a couple of these. But Phil Noto did a concept art piece, and it's got like all these Jedi that are standing here. They've got the Jedi logo down at the bottom, and there's, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 different Jedi listed here or shown here. And a couple of these stand out. The one on the far right, who's got like this cowl or something over her face, she's holding what looks to be a darksaber. Are you going to go on record right here, right now, and say that is no, I'm kidding, a darksaber of some sort?
I mean, it looks like a darksaber. And
so that's a yes.
They would be very smart with having the darksaber toy coming out this year.
Oh, yeah.
Have a character with a darksaber.
Absolutely.
They're not fools.
They're not fools. No, good point. That's they probably will kind of play on that. So that was one. The other thing that stood out next to her, it looks like, or I'm going to assume that's a female, but next to her, although I got to mention her blade, her hilt looks pretty weird. It almost looks like a dragon's head or some kind of a beast with its mouth open, and that's where the saber comes out.
Yeah, it's crazy looking.
Really cool. And then we got, no big deal Trandoshan right there, standing there with a lightsaber, which I thought was interesting because I don't know that. I'm trying to think, and you correct me if I'm wrong. I can't remember a Trandoshan Jedi unless it came out in one of the billions of Dark Horse comics that came out. I can't think of an instance where we've had that, but nonetheless, we've got a Trandoshan looking Jedi, which I thought was cool. Looks like we got two brothers or twins next to them.
The Dathomirian twins.
Yeah. Those look cool. Oh yeah. So here, this is the other one. So I'm going to skip over the other ones because they're like, oh yeah, they're Jedi, whatever. No big deal. Double bladed lightsaber. Yeah. I've seen it too many times. But they got this guy standing here. He's like the third one over, and we'll put this in the show notes. Mike, put that in the show notes. There's one that's standing there. He's just kind of holding it. He's like Billy Badass. He's sitting there. He's got his lightsaber. It's just kind of floating in front of him. He doesn't have it ignited. He's the one, he's the one kid doing his own thing. But next to him, he's got a Lothwolf, which I thought was awesome that we're going to get to see these.
Yes.
And I can't not think about Doom and, what happened in Rebels. So I'm hoping they play up on some of that. I think that would be really awesome. And then if we go two more over, there's one final female character who looks like she has a single hilt, but there's two blades coming out of the lightsaber, almost like a fork, I guess. I don't think we've ever seen something like that. It's another variation thereof. And
I have no idea what species she is. She's like glowing, kind of see-through. It's very odd. Yeah.
No, it's a good point. There was, I think when we talked about Snoke at one point, there's an episode of the Clone Wars where there are these like luminescent beings that live on one of the planets, and I'm drawing a blank, but I think Snoke was at one point thought to be one of them. Almost kind of like the daughter, I guess. The daughter from the Mortis trilogy. Yeah. I'm not saying that she looks exactly like that, but that whole kind of like an aura that kind of floats around her, almost a translucent luminosity to her. But maybe, who knows? But yeah, nonetheless, the point of that is the concept art here. If these are characters that we get, I think it's really neat. There's a lot of variations here and things that we've never seen, at least in canon, for sure in canon, which I think is going to be really exciting. So I can't wait to see these characters and obviously learn more about them. Anything else in the concept art that stood out to you? And there's a lot here. I know we're not going to go through everything. What about all these creepy things?
They're disturbing.
Yeah, like they said no dark, right? No Sith. But then we've got like this zombie looking thing. We got like a vampire looking thing.
The one with the like skull on his head?
Yes. Yeah, and I made the joke that was Darth Bane, or maybe the spirit of Darth Bane, and I'm probably 100% wrong, but that's what that image conjures up for me, right? Like this undead wraith, lich king
arm.
Kind of thing. Yeah,
and he's holding something. And there's fur. I mean, there's a lot of great textures. I'm loving what they're doing with the costumes. They're not very, they're very, there's lots of fibers and textures and leather and metal, and it's a cosplayer's dream.
There's also this purple looking octopus thing, and that reminds of like Aboleth, which I know we've talked about many times on the show. Mike hates it, but we talk about it all the time. But yeah, like and I don't know, there's no scale here, but maybe this thing is a picture of something that's huge and not small. Maybe this is the thing that's causing the hyperspace lanes to shut down or people getting bumped out of hyperspace. But it doesn't look, it looks alien in a lot of different ways. The Nihil, I should say, I just want to touch quickly on them because they seem like this, they're the antagonists in all of this. They seem to be the ones that are going around trying to conquer the galaxy. It sounds like the Jedi are going to be pitched up against them in a couple different ways. But they don't look like they're a really collective group. They seem like they're just kind of like this mixed bag of thugs who got their crap together and are, trying to, make their way in the galaxy right now.
These masks that these characters are wearing remind me a lot of Enfys Nest in Solo.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, for sure. Some of these are almost like exactly like that. There's one that kind of looks like he's like an offshoot of Two Tubes. Yeah, no, it's a good point. And makes you wonder, why are they wearing the mask? Like every one of them has them. Maybe we'll find out. And I see Nihil, and I can't help but think of Dark Nihilus.
Yes.
Nihilus. I don't know if that's going to be, if there's some tie there. Maybe there's not. Maybe it's wishful thinking on my part. Maybe they're just repurposing the name because I think it sounds cool, or it's a callback to that character. But that would be interesting if there was something that tied those two together.
I'd love for that because that's such a fun character.
Yeah.
I saw my very first Darth Nihilus cosplayer this weekend. I was so excited. I walked by them and I was like, oh my God, I love your costume. And they're like, wait, you know who I am? And I was like, yes. Yes,
some of us actually do. Yeah, no, it's a great character. I've posted many things on our social media accounts with that character before. Okay, so we're going to end this. We're going to end on this note here on one last thing, I promise, and this is the last thing. The last thing I do want to talk about is something that came up, and I'm going to get a little serious here because it's very controversial. But they released a picture of the idea board, and unfortunately, dinosaurs was listed as a Star Wars wish. So, yeah,
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. Why? I don't understand why people. Okay, so all joking aside, they have this list of all the things that they want to do, and there's a column that says Star Wars wishes. It's got like High Republic, Relic Hunters, University. I don't know what that means. Maybe University scholar, representation, diversity, something about legends. I can't read that. Rival houses, Sith Empire, Chaos Agents, Splinter Group, Force users. Right, all these just cool things, and then they have dinosaurs with an exclamation mark. And it set a bunch of people off on Twitter that were upset because dinosaurs were suddenly going to be in Star Wars. And I'm like, have you not watched
Star Wars?
We've had dinosaurs from like even the original episode 4. The dewbacks were like a lizard-looking dinosaur thing. I mean, we even talked about crate dragons, which, not a dinosaur, but come on, give me a break. So anyways, there's been a lot of fun that's been made over the last week with dinosaurs. I know I posted a couple of things. Jose Older has really just had a great time with this. Both he, Cavan Scott, and I think Charles Sewell, all of them really have been posting all kinds of pictures of dinosaurs with lightsabers. We've seen dinosaurs fighting Jedi and fighting Force users with lightsabers. Yeah.
It's been great.
Yeah, maybe we'll get dinosaurs. Who knows?
I so hope so.
Yeah. I hope they stick it to them too. Like they really are dinosaurs wielding lightsabers. I think that'd be great.
Yes.
All right. What are your final thoughts here on the High Republic and everything that's coming out here soon?
I am ready for the books to come out now. I'm really excited, and I just can't wait for new Star Wars content. That's basically the bottom line here. And it's really exciting to finally have something that feels like the expanded universe again, and that anticipation for sinking into like a new universe being created in a book series. So that's what I'm excited for.
Yeah.
It's keeping me going through the summer.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'd echo all of those sentiments exactly. I'm pretty excited about the High Republic. Even with the novels that came out as part of the Skywalker saga, you always did feel like they were still bound and there was only so far they could go with these things. And here it feels like there really is nothing. There's nothing that's going to keep them in check. That's pretty exciting because it does, like to your point, it feels like, EU 2.0 or Legends 2.0 all over again. We got a lot of different characters to play with. We got new storylines. We've got some great writers behind it all. So it's really easy for me, I think, to get behind all of this, get really excited about it. And I really, at this point, cannot think of anything that's going to be too much of a con. Unless you don't like to read, then you got a problem.
Audiobooks.
That's right. Go to audiobooks. There's ways around that. So yeah, this is exciting. And then, the future, I think all this is going to be setting up the stage for obviously, maybe a quote phase 2 or phase 3. That's exciting. They have officially gone on record as saying that there are no movies or TV shows or any of that stuff planned with the High Republic right now. However, they're not closing that door. They are leaving it open to say that if things go really well and this is received in really well and people are excited about it and it makes sense that they could go that route and do whatever they want to. So they're not painting themselves in a corner here. So there's a potential for this stuff to expand beyond just the print, which I think is pretty cool and exciting as well, because we got some really great characters here. So especially a lot of the concept art to play with. So we'll continue to cover all of this. It may just be news that we'll be covering at this point until we get closer to the releases. And then obviously when all this comes out, I think we're going to cover all of it heavily, and that includes everything. So we'll cover the novels, the young adult novels, and we're going to cover the comics as well. How that format looks like on the show, I'm not sure just yet, but we definitely will, because we don't have any movies coming out, right? We've got TV shows that'll be out, but for the most part, a lot of this stuff is going to hit before we even get into the new seasons of TV series and all that. So this is our Star Wars. This is the future of Star Wars for the short time here, or maybe even the long term. And yeah, get excited about it if you're not already. All right. We will end that part of the show, and we've got, here comes the Maggie Hour. So a couple of shout outs that I want to cover. So Brian 0811 says, another fantastic show. I really enjoyed this week's show. I really liked Maggie in the show. Seemed like a natural and a true Star Wars fan. Defiantly should be a regular guest. I think he meant to say definitely should be a regular guest.
I can be very defiant as well.
I've heard of that.
Yes, thank you, Brian. I think you followed me on Instagram as well. So,
look at that.
Yes.
Picked up a follower. Yeah, thanks, Brian. Thanks for the feedback. You didn't name drop me. That's fine. We'll talk about that later. Formalis says, amazing episode, guys. Maggie was a great conversationalist. I couldn't even tell that she was under the weather. Oh, that's right. You were sick last week.
Yes,
you poor thing.
I know.
I still made you come on the show. I liked your theory on how Clone Force 99 would somehow not be affected by the inhibitor chip and have to fight off the other clones in the Siege of Mandalore. All right, we'll find out if she's right.
We'll see.
If she's right, we'll never hear the end of it. So get ready for that. You're going to see it all on Instagram, Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
On this show. Yeah. Paint the skies. And then lastly, our buddy Greg over at Rebel Base Card says, more great midday. The Clone Wars talk continues in the podcast queue with Albert and Maggie on the Cantina Cast. Good stuff. So thank you, Greg. And if you guys get a chance, please listen to Rebel Base Card. He does a great show out there. It's all about card collecting, Star Wars card collecting. He's got a great tagline called Great Pull Kid, which I think is always fun. But yeah, thank you so much for that feedback. I really appreciate that as well. And I think that's it. I think it's all we had. There was more, but I didn't want to swallow your head up too much, so I didn't put them in the show notes.
Well, I'm really so glad that people enjoyed me. I was so nervous.
Yeah, well, gonna let this be a thing. So where can people find you? What are you doing these days?
You can find me at Maggie of the Town on Twitter and the Maggie Lovitt over on Instagram. And I am just schlubbing along as an actor.
Schlubbing along.
Those 3 a.m. calls, they are early.
Oh, I bet. I can't imagine. Not for me. No thanks. All right, cool. Well, that's going to do it for this week. We'll be back next week at the end of the show. We'll likely cover the next episode of the Clone Wars, but there may be something else that we'll pick up as well. We'll just see how that goes. So any last word? I'm going to put you on the spot again. Any last words before we go?
I created the first meme for the High Republic.
Okay, well, all right. So now we got to give her the contact. We got to give everybody the context there. So we'll put the link somewhere in the show notes.
Yes.
Mike, you have to go find that. You're welcome. And with that, we'll see you guys next week.
You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.